What's up with that? Getting pushy as a subcontractor to the main contractor. You've got some nerve. I was being told this by Ryan Redfield, a department head at the main contracting company. So many statements throwing me off balance. And to top it off, calling me bottom of the barrel guy because I only graduated high school. I was seriously considering asking for a different assignment after this project was over. The $70 million project I received from Ryan, I tackled with all my might, united in effort, but what caused it to fall through? Maybe my lack of ability played a part. I'm eating right now, so wait till tonight, bottom of the barrel guy, haha. In such lines, all the reasons were hidden. My name is Michael. Right after graduating high school, I joined the Thompson Manufacturing Company. I lost my father early and was raised by my mother alone. With a younger sister and brother, I gave up on college to lessen the burden on my mother and chose to work. My mother strongly advised me to go to college, but I kept refusing. I hate studying, I said, choosing work over further education. Every time I saw her for several days, she kept saying I should go to college. At that point, I decided I'd find a job and never go to college out of sheer stubbornness. The job at Thompson Manufacturing, where I now work in sales, was suggested by my mother after she gave in. Assigned to the sales department, I learned from my superiors at work and devoured self-help books at home, striving to improve every day. 10 years passed. I was now accompanying Emily, my mentor in the company, who was about to retire for marriage, to a client meeting. Redfield Motors here produces several world-leading products. Their representative, Kevin, is a senior colleague who taught me what sales are all about. He's great. Since Michael, you're taking over from me, make sure you do well. Emily was a top-performing saleswoman. With her retiring, I took over some of her clients. Today was one such day accompanying her. Upon arriving at Redfield Motors, we were led to the meeting room. Emily is getting married. Congratulations. I first thought Thompson Manufacturing was joking, sending a greenhorn straight out of college as our report. Just kidding, though. You've been a hard worker and we've had a good relationship. It's like seeing off my own kid today. The meeting proceeded in a friendly manner throughout. Michael, right. Looking forward to working with you. I have something I'd like to request of your company right away. I listened closely and proceeded with the discussion, helped by Emily's input. I'll take this back to the office and get back to you early next week. That would be great. Will Emily still be around by then? She'll be here until the 31st of this month, so let us know if you need anything. I immediately started working on the paperwork for the request from Redfield Motors, running it by Emily, and then getting approval from my boss, David. I then scheduled an appointment with Kevin and visited Redfield Motors. What's this? Who are you? I was told the rep was a stunningly beautiful woman, and here you are, a young man. Our company must really be underestimated as a mere subcontractor. The man who appeared in the meeting room was holding a soda bottle, wearing a shirt with a goofy pattern, and surprisingly, a tattoo was visible peeking out from under his sleeve. He had long, blonde hair and looked to be about my age, a young man for sure. I'm Ryan. I was assigned as your new contact, but I'm withdrawing. That's that. Saying this, the young man named Ryan left the meeting room. I had no idea what had just happened. After waiting about 10 minutes in the meeting room, the man who called himself Ryan returned. Still here, good for you. If you had left, I was thinking of canceling the deal. The old man must have asked you for something. Show me. Explain it quickly. As I prepared, feeling a bit thrown off, I asked him a question that was on my mind. What about our usual contact, Kevin? He was useless, so I sent him to warehouse duty. Hurt his back in 3 days and is now hospitalized. Useless, right? Haha. I calmly began explaining the details of the documentation. So, How much will it cost and by when can you deliver? As I mentioned at the end of our last meeting, the proposal is on the last page. $10,000 for 2 weeks, huh? No, it's $100,000 for 2 weeks. That's expensive. A tenfold increase just like that, and you are just a subcontractor. I deliberately kept silent. I like that look on your face. Let's go with this for now. You do the whole signing the contract thing, right? I'll get it done. So come pick it up tomorrow. Somehow, despite feeling off, it seemed like I had managed to close the deal. The next day, I went to see Ryan at Redfield Motors to pick up the contract from the day before. Wow, you're early. The contract is ready, so take it with you. Thank you. I'll get started on the work right away. What? You haven't started yet? I could have canceled it, you know. Excuse me. I like that look, that reaction of yours. See ya. It really threw me off. As I was leaving the meeting room, someone called out from behind. It was Kevin, on crutches. Ryan told me about you. Are you okay? It was tough manual labor I wasn't used to. It got me good. We talked for a while and then parted ways. A few days later, while doing desk work in the office in the afternoon, I got an internal call from a colleague in another department. The call was about no payment received from Redfield Motors yet. Normally, such delays never happened, so they contacted me as the person in charge. I confirmed the delay in payment and contacted Ryan at Redfield Motors. What's this? A subcontractor daring to chase the main contractor for payment. You've got guts. Don't worry, though. I just went on a vacation, and the processing got delayed. You can wait a couple of days, right, as a subcontractor. He said that unilaterally and hung up. Main contractor or subcontractor, does it matter that much between representatives? I thought he should have done it before going on vacation, but I didn't say it. I made the call, and payment was finally confirmed 4 days later. Just as I was about to call, the phone rang. Michael, you have a call. It's Ryan from Redfield Motors. Ryan was calling. I just finished the procedure. You should be grateful that a main contractor is personally informing a subcontractor over the phone. Thank you. Similar payment delays started happening frequently after this incident. Despite Ryan's somewhat prickly way of speaking on the call, I endured it. You're always so cool. Here's a big chance coming up. Did you know about the new safety standards changing early next year? Every company will need this new part to pass inspection. Yes, several small parts requiring advanced manufacturing. Right. Subcontractor with quick info, as expected. So, here's the thing. I'm looking for a company to make these. I've entered your company in the running. It's a deal worth over $70 million. You're entering, right? There's a joint briefing tomorrow at 1 p.m. in the large conference room on the 3rd floor of Redfield Motors headquarters. All interested subcontractors, gather or rather, just come. And that's what Ryan said. What should we do? I was confirming this big deal Ryan mentioned with my boss, David. I want the part specifications now. Need to hear from the ground crew too. Let's take our engineer and go there on the day. The engineer and I were led to the large conference room on the 3rd floor of Redfield Motors headquarters at 12:40 p.m. the next day. Impressive headquarters. There were 3 conference rooms just in the corridor we passed through. We took our seats, 10 minutes early, but no one else showed up. Then the conference room door opened. I thought it might be another company, but it was Ryan and a few men in work clothes. Let's start then. Today, the guys from the field will explain. You'll get 3 copies of the same document. Share with the person next to you. You guys, explain it clearly, so even this dumb subcontractor can understand. It's a valuable explanation from a main contractor. So listen carefully, subcontractors. Aren't other companies coming? The answer was straightforward. There's no other subcontractor capable of doing this but you. Didn't invite anyone else. Don't get too cocky just because a main contractor called you up. We listened for about 2 hours to 2 engineers from Redfield Motors and 1 expert from a specialized agency. Can you really make it, being just a subcontractor? Based on our discussions with the engineers, it seems feasible, but I have a few questions, if that's okay. Go ahead, ask anything. The engineer and I asked several questions. Is that all? No more questions. Can we end this meeting, subcontractors? Thank you. We now have a clear idea, so we'll take this back and consider it. It's a $70 million annual deal. Don't talk big and then say you can't do it, especially as a subcontractor. I returned to the office and, as planned, held a meeting with the heads of each department. To make this, we'll need to use a patented technology we acquired earlier. We don't have a memorandum of understanding regarding its use with Redfield Motors, so we'll need their signature. Well, we can make a prototype in 4 days. Easier than I thought. I checked with each department and contacted Ryan the next day to make an appointment and visit. Let me guess, you are here to decline a $70 million deal, subcontractor. I had come to Redfield Motors' meeting room with the engineer. It was a challenging request, but our engineers managed to shape it. Made a sample, did you? How is it? I handed the sample received from Ryan to the head of Redfield Motors' technical department. The department head started measuring the sample from every angle. The size and shape are perfect. Please allow us to perform a functionality check. We have our engineer here, so we'd definitely like you to see it. Take them with you and do it quickly. Feel free to use the room. The department head left the meeting room with our engineer to perform the field verification. If the sample works out, we'll proceed as planned. But what about the price and delivery schedule? Depending on the sample, that's the intention. Right. Those guys are taking their time, aren't they? The head of Redfield Motors' technical department and our engineer returned. The sample passed, despite being from a subcontractor. Let's proceed as planned. Thank you. However, to manufacture this product, we need to use patented technology. To proceed as planned, we need a signature by 8 p.m. on the 30th. The 30th, just 3 days away. A signature. Mine should be fine, right? Should I write Michael? Just kidding. Need the company sticker too. Impossible at this hour. We'll do it another day. Please, I urge you to take care of it. Don't get so high and mighty as a subcontractor. Didn't you learn that in college? I wouldn't know. I didn't go to college. What? Bottom of the barrel? That's why you could take such an attitude. Just so you know, there are no bottom of the barrel employees at Redfield Motors. That's why you could only get into a subcontractor. Haha. After this is over, I seriously thought about asking for a change in assignment. I've been calling daily for the documents since then, but today I was told I was busy yesterday, so come tomorrow. When I visited the next day, I was informed Ryan is off today. Suddenly, it was the last day, the 30th. He's not at his desk right now. Can't you get a hold of Ryan? It's urgent. Please wait a moment. I was genuinely panicking. It was just before 7 p.m. Here's a call from Ryan. Are the documents ready? What's up? I'm meeting right now. Just ordered, so I'll be back in 2 hours. Come then. I'm going out of my way to return after dinner for a subcontractor. But the deadline is in an hour. Extend it. I was off yesterday, so it's additional time. Maybe stoppage time is easier for you to understand. Bottom of the barrel guy. That's not how it works. I'm eating right now, so wait till tonight. Bottom of the barrel guy. Haha. Really? Is that okay? Huh? I didn't receive the documents from Redfield Motors. Yes, I understand. I'll do as instructed. It was my lack of ability. I apologize. Thank you for saying that. I'll head back to the office now. At 8:10 p.m. on the 30th, I contacted David, who was waiting at the company. It seems President Thompson was there too. When I returned to the office, David and President Thompson approached me. Let's wrap this up once and for all. I sent an email to Ryan. After that, I was busy drafting messages to various parties about the conclusion of the project and expressing our gratitude for their efforts. Frankly, thinking about the next day was depressing. How many places would I have to go around for apology? Anderson Metalworks, who had just informed us they were increasing staff to set up production, had just helped us with the sample. At 9 p.m., as I was preparing to leave, a phone call rang out. What's this about? It's a $70 million deal. Such a big project rarely comes to a subcontractor. Come right now. The documents are ready. You can fudge the time a bit. Thank you for the call. Please don't ask for the impossible. We can't manipulate the time. I'll be taking the documents you gave us to another place. Their deadline is 9 p.m. It's impossible now. Such a big project probably won't come to a small subcontractor like us again. However, we've decided to turn down this big project. It's an order from the president. I'm reflecting on the fact that it wasn't a project for someone with only a high school diploma like me to handle. What do you mean by canceling the contract now? I'll sue you. How am I supposed to explain this to the main contractor? This involves cutting-edge technology. It could even lead to a leak of secrets. We hadn't signed the main contract yet. We didn't receive the documents from you. Maybe you could tell the main contractor that you couldn't contract with the subcontractor because you were reading, but I doubt they'll treat you seriously. As for the leak of cutting-edge technology secrets, the confidentiality of information received from your company in relation to the sample production is assured, as written in the sample production contract. So, don't worry. Damn it, a mere subcontractor. In yesterday's internal meeting, David and President Thompson told me this. There's been no good news from Redfield Motors lately. We've heard from various sources that a guy named Ryan is trouble. It matches the reports we've heard from Michael. Our assigned report if the documents don't arrive in time. We decided to cancel the contract. But canceling a $70 million contract is a big deal for our company too. Yes, it's a big deal for our company. That's why we prioritized minimizing damage over profit. I'm coming over there now. Wait for me. The call was abruptly cut off. Even now, his tone was condescending. The call was on speaker, so David, President Thompson, and many others who were still there heard it. Let's see what face he shows up with. Shall we wait then? We can go out for dinner afterward. David, President Thompson, and I waited in the conference room. It was Ryan and President Redfield who showed up. We've heard from our manager, Ryan. We're truly sorry. If you don't mind me asking, what exactly did Ryan tell President Redfield? He said the contract couldn't be completed due to traffic jams and the paperwork couldn't be handed over. I played the loud call on my phone to President Redfield. Ever since a previous incident with a business partner over a call, I started recording all calls. What's this, Ryan? I'm eating right now. That's different from what you said. I got caught in traffic after eating and returning to the office. I thought something was off. I couldn't understand why Thompson Manufacturing would cancel the contract, but now it makes sense. By the way, do you have any more recordings of Ryan's words? If you do, I'd like to hear them. I mercilessly played them for him. A guy, and so young. Our company being underestimated by a subcontractor. What did the old man ask you for? Show me. Explain quickly. As a subcontractor, daring to chase a main contractor. That's enough, thank you. Quite a friendly conversation, huh? I've always told you, Thompson Manufacturing is a partner company. What's this subcontractor talk about? I said you could do as you liked, but I also told you about the responsibilities that come with it. We'll remove him from this project. Would you be willing to accept requests from us instead? Considering the numerous actions, statements, and attitudes of the manager, it's clear that Ryan's lack of management also significantly involves President Redfield. The $70 million project is huge for us as well. However, the damages we've suffered so far are immeasurable. After comprehensive consideration, we've decided to withdraw from all future dealings with Redfield Motors. That is all from us. What? Just because I made a small mistake, you are pulling out of all future deals? Don't we mean anything to you after all we've done? That's not the case, Ryan Miller. We've personally and professionally endured humiliation because of you. How do you know that name? The engineer who accompanied me with the sample last time was from Anderson Metalworks, a part of our group company. That's irrelevant now. Ryan was originally a worker at Anderson Metalworks. He was handsome and excellent in conversations with women, spending nights with different women each day. One day, he met President Redfield's daughter and learned about an unplanned pregnancy. Ryan was preparing to leave the town, but the woman was delayed in leaving her home, and it led to him being forcibly taken to the Redfield residence. Upon arriving, Ryan was surprised to find himself in a luxurious house. He understood then that a subcontractor's employee had become a candidate for the president of a main contractor. A all rags to riches story. After the wedding, he was living in a big house with a luxury foreign car. Ryan seemed to be on top of the world. His first job title was suddenly a department head. In the next year, he became a division manager. This information came from an Anderson Metalworks engineer and Kevin from Redfield Motors. By any chance, Ryan, did you also drop out of high school? Or rather, are you a high school dropout? Are you what you call the bottom? Why would you think I'm a high school dropout? You know Jack, right? I was his junior in the club. He really pushed us hard. You graduated from Midwestern High. Yes. Ryan, me, and even my father. We all graduated from Midwestern High. Well, that's a prestigious school known for its academic excellence. I was top of my class until middle school. Once I got to high school, I was surrounded by geniuses. Couldn't keep up with the classes and lost all motivation. I'm a high school dropout. So what? I'm the bottom. Well, being a dropout doesn't matter when you're an adult. We will be stopping all dealings with Redfield Motors and we'll be filing for unpaid dues and damages. We'll be taking legal action. Thank you. What does this mean? A subcontractor suing the main contractor. Ryan, it seems you've been treating others similarly elsewhere. Unpaid dues, arrogant behavior. Your last resort is always, I'll stop dealing with your company, right? Now you know how that feels. As a subcontractor, it's none of my concern. I'll get someone else to make it. Please do so if you can. Thank you. Understood. I'll take this as an expensive lesson. Damn it. I'll find someone to make it for me. Ryan was grabbed by the scruff of his neck by President Redfield, who then left. Ryan found a company overseas willing to manufacture for half the price we quoted, and he called our office the other day. To me, he bragged, serves you right. I managed to deliver on time and was relieved. I should have gone with them from the start. A few weeks later, a recall occurred at Redfield Motors' client location. Apparently, the cause was defective parts supplied by Redfield Motors. The client demanded a substantial amount in damages. Ryan had the parts made by an overseas company using the design we provided for the main contractor. However, the design was for the sample, and it required further improvements in over 100 areas to become the final product. Ryan was fired for taking full responsibility for this fiasco. He also got divorced and was kicked out of his house. He was burdened with hefty alimony and child support payments. I heard rumors of Ryan struggling at a construction site, but unfortunately, I couldn't verify them. Redfield Motors was sued for a significant amount by the main contractor for leaking even the sample design. Additionally, the overseas company used it as a base for their own product, making a few modifications and released it as a hit product. Years later, rumors of Redfield Motors potentially going public were quashed, and they seemed on the brink of collapse. We couldn't work with Redfield Motors anymore, but we received inquiries from 3 of the world's largest auto parts companies we had never dealt with before. The recall incident with Redfield Motors seemed to have spread the word about the sample we created globally. We conducted several remote meetings and underwent performance tests at the local sites. Later on, trade negotiations were held in the US, and both parties reached a mutual agreement. The deal amounted to more than $70 million. My younger sister and brother graduated from college, with my sister landing a job at a government office and my brother at a securities company. Both of them attended public high school and national universities, which greatly relieved my financial burden. Around that time, I asked Emily, 4 years my senior, out for dinner after successfully closing a deal. Since she was single, I half-jokingly invited her to a movie on the weekend. Sure, it's been years since someone asked me out on a date. We managed to keep our relationship secret from colleagues and seniors and got married after dating for a year. We thought Emily would stay and you'd become the house husband. We were often teased. It turned out that everyone in the department had known for quite a while and had pretended not to notice. My sister and brother insisted on paying for the wedding, which made our honeymoon passable. You'd say, it's a client with a wonderful person who taught me what sales are. But you learned a lot, right? I shared the day's events with Emily, now my wife, as we lay in bed. It's sad though, for his wife and child if he got divorced. According to Kevin, Ryan never liked kids and never once held his child. Apparently, the kid wasn't even attached to him. His continued affairs were discovered, and that, along with everything else, led to the divorce. The work mistake was just the last straw. What about you, Michael? Any affairs? Me, I'm not handsome enough for that. If anything, I'm more worried about you, Emily, with your beauty and great style. At work, I became a supervisor responsible for 5 subordinates. Is this also thanks to your wife's support? They kept teasing me like that, but I didn't mind. The deceased isn't coming back, so the spa trip takes priority. It was indeed a sudden passing, so I felt bad about canceling the hotel we had booked. But I couldn't believe she wouldn't attend her father-in-law's funeral or change her travel plans. I'll visit the grave later. See you. Susan got ready by herself and left for the trip alone. After everything was over and I was completely drained, I arrived home and started changing my clothes. As I was about to take off my jacket, Susan returned from her trip. I'm home. The spa hotel were amazing. Swallowing various emotions, I told Susan. I just got back from your parents' funeral. Huh? My name is Mark. I'm 42 and work in an office at a medical equipment manufacturer. From an outsider's perspective, my life might seem dull, but it's quite fulfilling because I spend a lot of time and money on my hobby. My hobby is traveling. I've always loved spontaneously going on solo trips whenever I had time off. I've traveled all over the US, never getting tired of it. The thawing springs of Alaska, the lush green summers in Oregon, the beautiful autumn leaves in New England, enjoying hot springs while watching the snow in Colorado. I frequent my favorite tourist spots and have become a familiar face at many hotels. Acting alone has become a habit for me, and being with others tires me out. That's why, despite having worked at the same company for many years since graduating, I remained single. But at 40, a turning point came. While enjoying a leisurely solo trip to Charleston, I met Susan. We stayed at the same hotel and, like me, she was well acquainted with the landlady. In the lobby, with its beautifully manicured garden view, we happened to be looking at the same autumn leaves. A red dragonfly flew in front of me, and I instinctively raised my finger. When it landed on my finger, Susan looked over and smiled. I returned the smile and said hi. It's a beautiful view, isn't it, every fall. I feel like staying in this hotel. Me too, so we must have crossed paths before without realizing it. We hit it off while talking. I vividly remembered Susan smiling against the backdrop of the beautiful garden. Susan attended a university in the city, but after graduating, she returned to her hometown in Montana. She worked in a real estate office there. She was outgoing, and I felt relaxed talking to her, unusual for someone I had just met. For someone like me, who had spent a lot of time alone, not having to be on guard was important. We exchanged contact information and after the trip, kept in touch for calls and video chats, deepening our friendship. Meeting Susan made me seriously consider marriage for the first time. She was 33 at the time. Like me, she quickly became serious about marriage after meeting me. That year's end, I proposed to Susan. She agreed but had one condition. I'm not young anymore, and if you want kids, things might get rushed. I'm fine if it happens naturally, but I don't want to undergo fertility treatments. I wasn't particularly fond of children and understood that tool fertility treatments could take on a woman. So we decided not to stress over having kids and instead enjoy our hobby of traveling. At our wedding, Susan's parents and sister, Linda, from Montana, congratulated us. "Mark, please take good care of Susan. We were worried she'd never settle down because of all her travels, but now we can finally relax. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, I may not be much, but I promise to work hard and make Susan happy." And so, Susan and I started our married life together in the city. For our honeymoon, Susan and I, who both love domestic travel, chose Hawaii. We relaxed there for about 2 weeks before returning to the city life and starting our married life. Since then, every 3 months, I took time off work so we could enjoy the diverse landscapes of the U.S. I think those were the most peaceful and happy days of my life. I won't say I've always lived alone, but most of the time, I made decisions and acted on my own. However, now everything was a duo act, and I started consulting before making any decisions. Life became more relaxed and enjoyable for me every day. But what about Susan? For about a year after our marriage, Susan was a homemaker, but gradually she expressed a desire to work outside. We could manage on my salary alone if we didn't splurge, but it seemed Susan wasn't completely satisfied. One evening after I returned from work, Susan had a suggestion. "There's a boutique nearby looking for a part-time clerk. I went for an interview, and they said I could start tomorrow." I was somewhat unsettled that she had gone for an interview without discussing it with me first. But it seemed like staying at home all day was almost painful for Susan, who had always been working. "Sure, we can get by on just your salary, but I want my own spending money. Everyone in the city is so stylish, and I feel so dowdy in comparison." I never thought of Susan as dowdy, having lived in the city myself. "Aren't you overthinking it?" To me, you fit in perfectly with the city life. "That's sweet of you to say, but you're biased. I want to own designer bags and buy high-end skincare products for aging care, you know. That's okay, right?" I was really torn. Designer bags and expensive cosmetics seemed like a waste to me. But that's probably because I'm a man not interested in fashion. "All right, just don't neglect the housework, okay? Coming home tired from work to a living room full of laundry is the last thing I want." Susan pouted. "I've realized since getting married, you're quite the domineering husband, Mark. That's not in vogue anymore, but I'll try my best to avoid that situation." And so, Susan started working part-time. The boutique she worked at was in a prime location, on the second floor of a building near the station. The store was lined with high-end brands carefully selected by the manager, Kevin. I was pretty worried. Surrounded by all these dazzling brands, could Susan resist the temptation to buy? Her earnings might end up being spent on these high-end brands, leaving little to save. But that was her wish, so I resigned myself to it. What I feared most was Susan's change. And as I feared, Susan did change. Once she started working, she became more flamboyant. How much she earned in a month? She wouldn't tell me. Our bedroom started overflowing with her dream high-end brand bags and luxury cosmetics. But such changes weren't a major issue. Eventually, Susan began to dislike traveling with me. Even if I took leave, she'd tell me to go on trips alone because of her work. And when she did find time to travel, it was always when I was busy at work. Her travel companion was often a colleague from her part-time job, Ashley. Traveling is about enjoying the extraordinary. It's better to deepen friendships by traveling with friends rather than with a husband I see every day. Ashley was 36. A woman enjoying her single life. According to Susan, Ashley spent most of her earnings on high-end brands and had no savings. Susan said she was showing her the joys of travel. Ashley has a shopping addiction, but I'm teaching her that money should be spent on experiences, not just things, for travel. I only talked to Ashley once and got the impression that she lived a rather ephemeral life. She didn't talk much and seemed to have few friends. Becoming friends with such a woman and teaching her about a world she doesn't know might be a bit like volunteering, I guess. Half a year later, Susan had plans to go on a spa trip with Ashley. Susan was supposed to leave around noon, but she was slow to get up. I finished preparing for work and went outside with a bag of burnable trash. A neighborhood housewife, Emily, was already there and noticed me. "Hi, Mark," she greeted. After some small talk, Emily began to share an astonishing piece of gossip. "Susan sure loves to travel, but you should keep a closer eye on her." I didn't understand and asked her what she meant. "What do you mean? It's true we haven't traveled together much lately." Then Emily lowered her voice and revealed a shocking story. "Actually, I saw Susan traveling with her boss when I was on a spa trip with my friends. Come to think of it, whenever Susan went on a trip lately, her boutique also happened to be closed. I had thought it was because both clerks were off, but I never imagined she could be having an affair." A surge of anger began to well up inside me. I needed to find out the truth. I moved away from the trash collection area and called in sick to work. I was in no mood to work. After the call, I returned home, and the house phone was ringing. "Susan, how long is she going to sleep?" I hurried inside and picked up the receiver. It was my mother, sobbing. Your father. He suddenly collapsed and was taken to the hospital, but it was too late. I felt as if I'd been hit on the head. According to my mother, my father had collapsed on his way to the bathroom early in the morning. Unfortunately, she was still asleep and only found my father collapsed in the hallway when she got up. The delay in finding him was why he passed away at the hospital. If only I had noticed sooner. "Mark, please come home right away." Of course, I just happened to take the day off, so I'll get ready and come with Susan. "What about Tom?" He said he'd come right away. My brother Tom and his wife live a little bit far away from the home of my parents, so he'd probably arrive before me. I needed to hurry. I wanted to comfort my mother, who was shocked by my father's death. I hung up and went to wake Susan. My mind was in turmoil with the sudden news, and I wasn't sure what the right thing to do was. Should I confront Susan about the affair now? Pretending not to know and going home with her might comfort my mother. For my father, who had passed to heaven, I decided not to confront Susan about the affair immediately. When I opened the door to wake Susan, she was already up, packing for her trip. "Susan, listen, my father has passed away. My mother just told me over the phone. I'll get ready now, so let's go home together and attend the funeral." But Susan's response was unbelievable. "Why should I go? I'm not going." Why wouldn't you? He was your father-in-law. How can you not say goodbye for the last time? Susan sighed heavily, looking utterly fed up. Oh, I hate this. This kind of family obligation is such a hassle. The deceased isn't coming back, so the hot spring trip takes priority. Indeed, if she were to attend the funeral, the hotel reservation would need to be canceled. But I couldn't believe she wouldn't attend her father-in-law's funeral or change her travel plans. I'll visit the grave later. Okay, I'm leaving now. Susan just got ready by herself and left for the hot springs trip. At that moment, I felt like I truly saw Susan's true nature. I let her go without confronting her about the suspicion of infidelity. Everything was becoming too much of a hassle. I decided to forget that Susan was my wife and rushed to be with my mother. I packed a few days' worth of clothes into a small Boston bag. About 2 hours after Susan left, I was about to leave when the house phone rang. Wondering who it could be, I answered the phone, and it was from Susan's sister, Linda. Mark, something terrible has happened. My parents got a car accident and taken to the hospital, but I can't get in touch with Susan. I was stunned by one terrible event after another. Susan just left for a trip. How are your parents? Linda's voice quivered with tears over the phone. It's bad. They were in a head-on collision with another car. I'm so confused. Mark, can you come here as soon as possible? Linda's husband had passed away 5 years ago. Now, she was the only one at her family home, feeling lost about what to do. Linda, actually, my father passed away 2 hours ago, and I was just packing to go to my mother's. Linda gasped over the phone. What a tragedy. Your father too. I'll try calling Susan again. I'll keep trying to reach her too. For now, I'm going to take a taxi to my parents' home. My brother is there, so he can handle the funeral arrangements. I'll head to your place as soon as it's over. My condolences. What a day this is. So much misfortune all at once. As Linda said, it felt almost cursed to have so much misfortune hit at once. It took about 2 hours by taxi to reach my parents' home. Tom and his wife had already arrived and looked relieved to see me. Mark, glad you could make it. Mom has been in shock since she found out. Oh, isn't Susan with you? Well, I mumbled, not knowing what to say, and then went to the room where my mother was. Mom, we're here for you. Leave the funeral arrangements to us brothers. My parents had a close relationship, so my mother's shock was immense. She stayed by my father's side, mourning his passing. My sister-in-law complained about Susan not being there. After all, it was an old-fashioned family funeral, and female help was needed. I tried to prevent Susan's reputation from getting any worse. Linda, sorry for the trouble. Susan's parents also passed away, so as soon as the funeral is over, I'll head to Montana. Susan must be having a hard time too. I wish she could have come here, but under the circumstances, I understand. Tom and his wife thought Susan was in Montana for her parents' funeral. I didn't elaborate, and after saying farewell to my father at the funeral, took a train in my funeral attire. Linda looked exhausted. Mark, what's Susan doing? Her own parents have died, and where is she? We kept calling her cell phone, but it was turned off. I have a lot I want to say to Susan too, but for now, let's quietly say goodbye to your parents. So we managed to hold the funeral amidst the sudden chaos. When I called my office to say I'd be back the following week, I received a lot of sympathy. My boss said I could take more time off for bereavement, but I couldn't indulge in that. After everything was over, I returned home on Monday morning, utterly exhausted, and started changing my clothes. I entered the bedroom to take off my jacket when I heard the front door open. Susan was back. I'm home. The spa trip was fantastic. As I entered the living room, there was Susan, lying exhausted on the sofa. Seeing my face, she gave a slightly apologetic smile. Did your father's funeral go smoothly? I was appalled by Susan's words, but swallowed various emotions and told her, "I just got back from your parents' funeral." "What? Your father and mother passed away. It happened just 2 hours after you left home. Linda tried calling you, but your phone was off. I couldn't reach you either." Susan frantically took out her cell phone from her bag and turned it on. It was pointless now, and I was just astounded by her actions. I wanted to enjoy the escapism of the trip, but it can't be true that my dad and mom passed away. You must be angry and playing a cruel joke. If you think it's a lie, call Linda. Susan hurriedly called Linda. I could faintly hear Linda's reproachful voice from the cell phone. Watching Susan's panicked apologies, I realized how completely my feelings for her had cooled. In the train, I had been indecisive, but now I was resolved. "You must have enjoyed your affair trip. I came back today to pack my things. I don't think I'll be returning." I went back to the bedroom, packed a couple of shirts and suits in a trunk, and called a taxi to head to my parents' house. Susan kept calling persistently from her phone. I thought of turning it off like she did during her trip, but I still had things to say, so I answered, "I'm sorry for leaving the house unattended. Let me come to your family's home now to pay my respects." I replied with a feeling of detachment. "No need for insincere condolences. If you have time for that, be with your father and mother. They won't answer you anymore, though." Susan was in a panic. "Why is this happening? I go on trips all the time, but why did this have to happen now? Maybe it's karma, a heavy price to pay, I think, but at least to me, you're now a stranger. Have a good time with the store manager." With that, I turned off my phone. My return was a relief to my mother, who was feeling lonely after losing her husband, Tom, being transferred frequently, so there were circumstances preventing him from staying with our mother. "If I stay at the family home, everything will work out smoothly. Good to have you back. It's hard being alone in such a big house." "Don't worry, Mom. I'll commute to work from here. I can't replace Dad, but I won't let you feel insecure anymore." My mother tearfully expressed her gratitude. "I'm glad I had sons. In times of sudden misfortune like this, you really are dependable. It's because you and Dad raised us with love. I wish I could have been more filial to Dad. Now, I'll do my best to help you." Losing my father made me realize his greatness. Not having children myself, I hadn't fully understood how much effort he put into raising us. Now, I'll devote myself to Mom and his place. A few hours later, Susan chased after me to our family home. She pleaded for forgiveness through the intercom. "Please reconsider the divorce. I'll change my ways." On the intercom screen, I saw Susan desperately knocking on the front door. "Shouldn't you let her in?" I don't know the details, but Susan must have had her reasons. But I firmly told her through the intercom, "I'll send the divorce papers later. Sign them and be happy with the store manager." I told my mother about Susan's affair and how she enjoyed a trip with her lover during her parents' funeral. Hearing this, my mother was appalled and declared she'd never speak to Susan again. Thus, Susan and I decided to divorce. I demanded alimony from Susan and her lover, Kevin. I heard Kevin's wife also demanded alimony from Susan. Despite their debts, Susan and Kevin promised to pay. Susan agreed to the divorce quickly, thinking she could remarry Kevin. But neither Kevin nor his wife planned to divorce. With 2 growing children, they decided to work on rebuilding their marriage. Susan might have thought she found true love with Kevin instead of me, but that was a big mistake. Perhaps in the extraordinary setting of our travels, we looked at each other through a filter that made everything seem special. Now that I'm calm, I'm amazed at my foolishness for finding her attractive. We've canceled the lease on the apartment we lived in together, so Susan has lost her place. Even if she wanted to return to her hometown in Montana, her sister Linda would never forgive her. The fact that Susan was out having fun while unreachable during her parents' passing would quickly spread in a small town. How could she face returning there after such an embarrassing act? Once things settled, Linda even came to my family home to offer her condolences. I really appreciate your help with the funeral. Without you, Mark, we couldn't have had a proper service. I just did what I should as a son-in-law. By the way, how is Susan? I imagine it's tough for her, having to pay alimony to me and her affair partner's wife. After what she did, you know, in a small town, word spreads fast. The company she worked for before meeting you isn't willing to rehire her, so she's struggling. I see. I have no feelings left for Susan, but I'm curious how she's managing. She always dreamed of city life. After getting married to you and living in the city, it must be hard for her to live in a small town with everyone watching, but you reap what you sow. I heard that all the inheritance left by their parents went to Linda. Because of the disgrace Susan brought to the family name, she had to sign papers relinquishing her inheritance rights. I don't think my parents forgive Susan. They might have overlooked her absence at the funeral, but when I think of the trouble she caused you, I'm sure our parents are weeping in the hereafter. Susan couldn't have her relatives pay the alimony for her and had no one else to turn to. Looking back, maybe the days she lived with me were the happiest in her life. She got to live her dream in the city, spending her earnings freely and enjoying her fair trips. I heard she's now living in a modest apartment without a bath near the area we used to live. Recently, I ran into Emily, the neighbor who informed me of Susan's affair, at a shopping mall. She told me she had seen a changed Susan. Working day and night to pay the alimony, she's become quite thin. She was cleaning the restrooms in a building. I felt a bit guilty seeing her like that. Strangely, I didn't feel sorry for her, nor did I think of myself as particularly cold-hearted. I've moved on, thinking about the next chapter in my life. So, I've started living with my mother. She was down after losing my father, but she's been getting better lately. She participates in senior activities in the neighborhood, enjoying yoga and chess. I live quite freely too, and recently I've started enjoying solo trips again. But I'm cautious about women I meet while traveling. With Susan's example, even if I find a good connection, I remember it's through the filter of the extraordinary. One day, 2 years later, I attended my middle school reunion. There, I hit it off with a classmate who had just divorced her husband. We go out for drinks twice a week, and I'm thinking of inviting her on a day trip. You don't have to join, you know. Suddenly, I'm startled by a voice from behind. It's Emily. Her words instantly send my high spirits plummeting, like watching a thermometer drop. Yes, I have a hard time dealing with her. My name is Mike, 25 years old. I work at a local beverage company. I joined this company because of an incident that happened back in elementary school. It was during a 6th grade social studies class where we visited a distillery. Henry Williams, known as the master brewer, was the highest authority in brewing. He himself had guided us through the brewery. He explained that the most important element in distilling is water. The staff around us started to move. They began lining up paper cups filled with water in front of us, 4 cups each. 3 of these contained tap water, while 1 had groundwater. Apparently, it was a game to identify the cup with groundwater. My classmates were saying things like, "I can tell," and "Aren't they all the same?" Everyone raised their paper with their answer. I chose number 4. No one else had picked number 4. Number 4 is correct, and only one person got it right, said Henry, and everyone turned to look at me. As everyone exclaimed in awe and clapped, I tried to play it cool, saying, "Just a lucky guess." Henry suggested another round to see if it was really just luck, preparing new cups, all with the same groundwater. This time, it was the same groundwater. The task was to choose the same water as before. I got this one right too. Apparently, even those working in the distillery often get it wrong. After seeing my skill, Henry said, "You might just have a God-given talent for this," and praised me. Having rarely been praised before, I was over the moon. This event was covered in the school newspaper and the company's internal bulletin, making me somewhat famous in school in the local area. I had been often teased before due to coming from a poor single-parent household. But this changed things. I stopped being teased and became more outgoing, joining in with everyone else. Time passed, and I was in my 3rd year of middle school, facing decisions about my future. Coming from a poor family, I planned to work right after high school, so I aimed for a vocational high school. Then a turning point came in my life. My younger brother was diagnosed with osteosarcoma, a type of cancer. While we weren't too worried about the costs of surgery and treatment, but hospitalization would be expensive. Moreover, my brother was still in elementary school and needed a lot of care, which was likely to affect my mom's job. So, I decided to give up on furthering my education. My mom kept telling me to continue my studies until the very end, but I didn't want to add more burden to her already full plate. When I told her that we should support my brother's treatment together, she burst into tears and apologized. My mom raised us by herself, and I had never heard her complain once. That's why I had always seen her as a strong figure, and her tears left me bewildered. After explaining my situation to my teacher, my homeroom teacher introduced me to a company that was open to hiring me. Among them was the beverage company where I now work. When I found this company, I remembered my visit to the distillery. I thought maybe I could use my talent here. I quickly wrote my resume and applied for the job. I was so nervous during the interview, I wasn't even sure if I was speaking clearly. That's understandable, considering I was being intensely scrutinized by people over 30 years my senior. I told them how I wanted to cure my brother and ease my mother's load, but I wasn't confident that I had conveyed my message properly. The interview ended without any sense of accomplishment. I remember trudging home, thinking I had blown it. A week passed with no word, and I was about to give up hope. That's when I received a letter from the beverage company. Nervously opening it, I found to my surprise that it was a job offer. And that's how I ended up working at the local beverage company. Initially, I was assigned to the factory line. This factory produced soft drinks like soda. My first job was to transport ingredients like sugar and load them into machines. Dealing with new people and the tough work was overwhelming at first. When I first joined the company, I was completely overwhelmed. But the older colleagues treated me like a younger brother and took good care of me. They taught me everything from scratch and instilled in me a proper work ethic. I worked hard, driven by the desire to cure my brother as soon as possible. Thanks to my efforts, I steadily gained skills, and by my 3rd year, I was entrusted with the final inspection. In final inspection, I had to be mindful not only of the appearance, such as color, but also of smell and taste. I also had to ensure there were no impurities and that the product met taste and flavor standards. Final inspection is like the last line of defense. If anything gets overlooked here, it could lead to a trust issue for the company. In the worst case, we might have to recall all products. That meant I couldn't let my guard down for a second. To deliver better products, I put in even more effort than before. And here, I really began to flourish. One day, while conducting the usual final check on the products, I noticed a slightly different taste. A subtly different taste lingered, unlike the usual. I ran it through the inspection machine, but no abnormal values were detected. I asked another inspector, but he didn't notice any difference. Still not convinced, I consulted my supervisor, Ted. Ted also felt something was off. We stopped the production line and checked everything one by one. It turned out that a mixer motor was broken, causing the ingredients not to blend properly. Ted praised me for noticing the difference in taste. I was so pleased with the compliment, I became even more immersed in my work. After that, I kept detecting subtle deteriorations in ingredients and anomalies in taste. My exceptional sense of taste became well known in other departments. The materials department, responsible for arranging ingredients, would check them thoroughly on days when I was in charge of final inspection. Word of my talent reached the ears of the head of the product development department, and I was transferred there. The product development department is one of the most important divisions in the company, responsible for creating new products. Naturally, it's filled with people who take great pride in their work. The department head, Emily, was a prime example of this. It's a given that everyone here has a college degree. A high school diploma is barely acceptable, and a middle school education is completely out of the question. On my first day after the transfer, I introduced myself, but it seemed like I wasn't exactly welcomed. Well, I guess that's understandable. However, Emily dropped a bombshell. Just do some work, but don't get in the way. She dismissed me as just a middle school graduate with a sensitive palate, claiming that without academic knowledge, I wouldn't be of any use. Her words made my blood boil. There are people in this world who, for financial reasons, couldn't pursue further education even if they wanted to. I'm one of them. How dare she speak so carelessly, without understanding someone else's struggles? I wanted to lash out in anger, but causing trouble on my first day wouldn't be wise. Pretending not to be bothered, I clenched my fist and held back. You can taste as much as you want, but don't expect me to take your opinion seriously, she said and left the room. The others around me snickered and went back to their work. I'll show them one day, I firmly resolved in my heart. From that day on, I arrived at the office earlier than anyone else and stayed later than anyone else, working. Though, as I wasn't entrusted with any real responsibilities, I spent my time researching and learning about the job. There was plenty to study, so I was never idle. However, it was frustrating not being able to get any help with things I didn't understand. Since I wasn't assigned any actual work, I couldn't stay for overtime in an official capacity. So, I clocked out at the regular time, and then returned to my desk to study. As the others left for the day, they'd comment loud enough for me to hear, wondering why I stayed when I had no work. I was used to it by now. I just greeted them casually and got back to my studies. This routine continued for about 3 months. Perhaps realizing it was getting out of hand, Emily gradually started to assign me some tasks. They were mostly menial jobs, but, well, it's better than nothing. I was grateful to be given even small tasks. However, the amount of menial work I was given was excessive. A senior colleague tried to help me, seeing my struggle, but Emily stopped them, saying that helping me would only make me complacent. Reluctantly, I managed all the tasks alone. One morning, during a company meeting, an announcement was made about a grand party to celebrate the company's 20th anniversary. It was my first time experiencing something like this, and I was excited. We were told to confirm our attendance via email. I went back to my desk to start working, and that's when Emily approached me. You don't have to join. There's no need for someone who hasn't contributed to the company, especially a middle school graduate, to come. With those words, she walked away. In Gerd, I marked the will not attend box on the attendance confirmation email. And so, I repeatedly hit the enter key to send the email. My job still mainly consisted of menial tasks, and it felt like the workload was increasing. Since weekdays weren't enough, I started coming in on weekend to finish my work. While I was stapling documents for a meeting, President Williams walked in. "Aunt Mike, I heard some noise and thought no one would be here," he said, and sat down next to me. He asked me how my job was going, and I ended up telling him about everything from my reasons for joining the company to my time working in the factory. I had rarely spoken with President Williams before, so I was initially nervous. But as he listened with a smile, my tension gradually eased. Getting carried away, I even talked about my elementary school visit to the brewery. Then he said, "You're the kid from back then," with surprise. But I couldn't think of what he was referring to. While I was puzzled, he invited me to have lunch with him. Looking at the clock, it was indeed lunchtime. As I hesitated, he encouraged me, saying, "Don't hold back." He also added that he'd like to continue our conversation. So, I took him up on his offer. While eating lunch at a nearby diner, President Williams continued our earlier conversation. "I was the head brewer back then," he revealed. Turns out, he was the same person who had guided me during my brewery visit. I almost choked on my fried chicken in shock. I never imagined that the head brewer from back then would be President Williams. I had seen him several times but never made the connection. "Thank you so much for that time. Being praised by you changed me, and I found my calling. I expressed my gratitude for changing my life. It's too early for thanks. You've still got a lot more to accomplish." After saying that, President Williams asked about my recent work. Not wanting to mention Emily, I talked about the new things I was learning. Hearing this, he gave me an encouraging look and told me to keep it up. Feeling like my efforts were recognized, my spirits soared. I never expected such a turn of events from an unexpected lunch with President Williams, but I returned to the office feeling warm and uplifted. However, back at the office, he turned serious and said, about the documents from earlier. It seemed he was curious about the meeting materials I was working on. When I showed him, he looked concerned. The documents were results from an internal survey on new product ideas. Several options were listed, but none had good reviews. He had been worried because no promising new products had been coming up. I had also tasted those new products. So, I inadvertently blurted out my concerns and suggestions for improvement. President Williams's expression changed suddenly. "Why didn't you report this?" he asked me. I fumbled, saying it was because I was new and didn't want to overstep my bounds. I couldn't say that I was being sidelined. President Williams seemed like he wanted to say more, but then just nodded in understanding. Glancing at the clock, it was past 2 p.m. Remembering the work I had left, I started to get restless. Noticing my state, he apologized for keeping me so long, expressed his hope for me to enjoy the upcoming anniversary party, and left with a smile. On the day of the anniversary party, although I had initially informed them of my absence, President Williams's personal invitation made it impossible for me to not attend. I tried to enjoy the event discreetly in a corner, making sure not to be noticed by Emily. I reunited with the factory workers after a long time. They all seemed well. While we were reminiscing, Emily approached briskly. The factory workers quickly dispersed. I thought I should escape too, but it was too late. Emily called me aside and took me towards the entrance. "You weren't supposed to come, right? Why are you here? It's open to everyone, and everyone has the right to participate." I finally retorted back to Emily's unreasonable remarks, feeling irked. Surprised by my response, Emily first stared at me in disbelief, then said, "You have no education, contribute nothing to the company, and yet you just take what you get. That's audacious." I couldn't hold back any longer, given her harsh words. I always admired your skills and talent, Emily. I respected you and wanted to be like you. But in every other aspect, honestly, I don't want to be anything like you. Although I struggled with her, I recognized her experience and skills as a manager. That's why I had been silently doing my job until now, but I reached my limit. Her face turned red with anger, possibly feeling looked down upon. At that moment, someone called out from behind. Enjoying yourselves, though it doesn't seem like a fun conversation. Turning around, I saw President Williams, surprising both Emily and me. He calmly advised Emily. You're young, talented, and hardworking, but don't let that turn into arrogance. A condescending attitude towards your subordinates is something you should change. Yes, Emily responded, looking down, ashamed. Then President Williams announced something astonishing. I'm thinking of assigning Mike as the development leader for the new product we're planning. I was shocked. Me, as the leader, I had barely been involved in development, and now I was suddenly being made a leader. I was happy with his words but also anxious about my capability. I was also concerned about Emily. She had always been the development leader. Glancing at her, I saw her looking shocked in a different way. Raising her head sadly, she asked, Am I not suitable as a leader anymore? Don't get me wrong, it's not a demotion. I want you in a higher position. As a manager, it's your role to nurture new leaders. And Mike has become indispensable in the product development department. As I struggled to grasp his intent, President Williams recounted what happened at the new product meeting. Emily had explained that the internal evaluation of the new product wasn't high. After that, improvement ideas were discussed, but nothing substantial came up. When everyone was at a loss, President Williams made a revolutionary suggestion. Everyone agreed, and the plan for the product moved forward. In fact, the idea was something I had mentioned to him at the diner. Hearing this, Emily looked utterly surprised. President Williams continued, revealing that alongside my duties, I was also studying to become a sensory inspector. He mentioned the episode from my childhood when I distinguished between different types of water at the brewery. He also mentioned my weekend work, preparing meeting materials. Hearing all this, Emily appeared embarrassed. I hope you will support him. I'm counting on you, President Williams said before leaving. His words warmed my heart. I hadn't expected him to value me so highly. Feeling emotional, I smiled to hide my nearly spilling tears. Afterward, I was appointed as the development leader and started working on the new product. Things have been different now, with a dizzying level of busyness. After that incident, Emily apologized to me for her past behavior. Now, she's a reliable supervisor who offers guidance on various matters. Turns out, she also grew up in a single-parent household. She worked part-time in high school to help with household expenses and paid her way for college, graduating from a prestigious university. Her experience led her to believe that those who were poor but didn't attend a good university simply didn't put in the effort. But now she understands that there are people like me who, despite their efforts, had to give up on further education due to circumstances beyond their control. She's vowed to stop judging people solely by their educational background. Emily is a talented individual who was promoted to the manager of the development department at a young age. Her guidance is strict, but I learn a lot every day. Also, my efforts paid off as I passed the sensory inspector exam. Having this qualification seems to have added credibility to my words. Initially, as a new leader, I faced a lot of resistance. But whether it's because I passed the sensory inspector exam or something else, now everyone is cooperative and we're working well together. I'm grateful to President Williams for showing me my path twice, and I want to continue to work hard to repay him in the future. Also, could you sign this? She said, pulling out a divorce oath. She had already signed her part. Then, with a high-pitched laugh, she taunted, "I'm divorcing a loser, a bottom dweller. Expected demand for alimony. Fine by me. You have an inheritance coming from your father. Let's start the inheritance process." I was shocked. I never imagined my modest father had such wealth. "Really? How much are we talking about?" I asked out of curiosity. The response was an astounding amount. About $20 million in assets. My name is Tyler. A 42-year-old ordinary office worker. I married 5 years ago, around the time I was promoted to department head. It was an office romance, and our department celebrated our big wedding, funded by my savings. Her radiant beauty and smile from that day are still etched in my heart. My beautiful wife, Michelle, was always the heroine at work. A bit clumsy and not the best at her job, but her ever-smiling, hard-working nature was charming. I never thought I could win over such a popular lady, just admiring her from afar. But working together on a project brought us closer, and I often had to cover for her scatterbrained moments. That led to my confession, and she bashfully nodded in agreement. We dated for a few years before I proposed when I got promoted. Really, I'm so happy. I spent a fortune, including my bonus, on a large Alexandrite engagement ring to show my sincerity. She was touched and promised to never take it off. I was head over heels for her and promised a comfortable life after our marriage. Originally, she wanted to be a stay-at-home wife and said, "Then, we need to buy a beautiful house." Her radiant smile was enough to make me feel content. We searched for properties and finally bought a luxurious condo, even going on an overseas honeymoon she desired. Though my savings were almost depleted, my steady job paid enough for a comfortable life. I planned to save again for our future children. A peaceful, happy home. Coming home to a wife waiting for me, and someday kids joining us, living happily as a family, has been my long-time dream. Maybe it's because I lost my parents when I was young. Back then, I was completely caught up in the excitement. Having a beautiful wife, a home to live in with my family, and dreaming of the future ahead. I never imagined things would turn out like this. A happy family life. A dream shattered in just a few years after marriage. Michelle was a beautiful and glamorous woman. She looked great in fancy clothes, and it was fun to walk beside her. But that feeling lasted only until our early days as lovers and newlyweds. At first, she'd happily accept even a small accessory with a bright smile and words of thanks, but 5 years into our marriage, she had completely changed. Back in our newlywed days, she would greet me with a smile as soon as I got home. Now, the house is locked, dark, and silent when I return. Sighing, I turn on the lights to reveal a messy living room, further irritating me. Reluctantly tidying up, changing from my suit to casual clothes, I head to the kitchen. The unused kitchen is clean, with no dinner prepared. Opening the fridge, I find it stuffed with beer and little else to eat. I end up making instant noodles, turning on the kettle. I don't drink alcohol, so the beer in the fridge is Michelle's. I used to find her clumsy cooking attempts endearing. But I realized she began to dislike cooking, preferring to eat out at night. Working myself, I had no time to cook, and thinking it was a burden for her too, I let go of the idea of home-cooked meals. However, Michelle started disliking eating at family diners or casual restaurants, always pushing for expensive places. When I said we couldn't afford fancy restaurants every night, she looked at me scornfully, asking, "What? You can't even provide that much?" If she didn't like cooking, store-bought meals would have been fine. Or we could afford to dine at casual places every night. But she always wanted expensive restaurants, The kind where people visit for special occasions, and I honestly couldn't afford that every night. Is this what being called unmanly means? I thought I was doing well enough to enjoy a bit of luxury. But her demands and spending increased yearly after we married. She's probably out having fun somewhere even today. I give up thinking about it and head to bed, tired. She returns just before I leave for work in the morning. Her late nights have become common. She seemed to leave the house in quite flashy attire. Dressed up, she comes home just as I'm about to leave, brushing past me without a glance, saying, "Move, you're in the way." I leave the room without a word, just a sigh. I'm off. There's no response. During these days, I receive an unfamiliar bill. It's a charge of several $1,000s on a credit card I don't remember having. Michelle must have gotten it in my name without my knowledge. I call the credit card company, frustrated. Explaining its unauthorized use doesn't reduce the bill since we're married, so I can only stop the card. Looking at the usage details, there are large payments to the same place. Feeling scared, I hire a lawyer and investigator to look into Michelle's activities. Turns out, she's been spending nights at a male strip club, showering her favorite man with gifts. The shock that my hard-earned money, meant for her, is going to another man. I can't overlook this, so I take leave to wait for Michelle's return. I need to face this reality I've been avoiding. When she finally wakes up past noon and comes out of the bedroom, she frowns upon seeing me. "Why are you here? It's normal for me to be in my own house." She laughs condescendingly, saying, "Oh, this condo is in my name now, didn't I tell you?" In her cackling laughter, there was none of the beauty she had at the beginning of our marriage. Instead, there was just a venomous woman standing there. "I really want to talk things through. Can you sit down, please?" Now, of all times. Well, I'll listen, at least. Reluctantly, Michelle sat down in the chair in front of me, responding to my request. "You made some credit cards in my name without asking. How much did you spend?" "I don't remember. I threw them away when they stopped working." Michelle spoke as if she was just discarding room trash. "The visits to the male strip club. Oh, you finally noticed. It started when I was still working at the company." What do you mean by that?" Demanding an explanation, Michelle looked at me as if she found the situation ridiculously funny. "That's right, Jason. Oh, you know, he became a stripper, and I was so mad about it that I started dating you." I was speechless at her words. "I thought you were boring, but you were good with money, so I figured that was okay." Michelle nonchalantly said this, then dreamily started talking about another man. "But you see, Jason came back to me. He's aiming for the top in the stripper world, making incredible money." She continued talking about this unknown man like a lovesick girl, leaving me wondering how to react. So, I thought I'd help him reach the top. That needs money, right? I had no choice. "Don't tell me, you sold this condo too." "Of course not. I'm planning to live here with Jason soon." I was completely lost at Michelle's words. Seeing my confusion, she said dismissively, "So, you should leave, okay." What are you talking about?" "That's what I mean. This condo is in my name now, and I want to live with Jason soon. You're off today, right? Pack your things and leave." After saying this, she went back to the bedroom, leaving me stunned and confused. I couldn't think straight, so I impulsively started packing and left the house. It was pouring with rain, but I didn't care. Wandering aimlessly, drinking alcohol I couldn't handle, I eventually passed out, waking up to a white ceiling. A nurse rushed over when she noticed I was awake, checking my pulse. "Where am I? Don't you remember? You collapsed in the rain from acute alcohol poisoning and were brought here." "I'm terribly sorry. It seemed I had drunk myself into oblivion, collapsed on the street, and ended up with pneumonia from the rain." You've been asleep for 3 days. 3 days. Yes, your workplace has called several times. It seems I had been asleep for quite a while. The mental strain must have been significant. Oh, it looks like you have visitors. Seeing a shadow at the door, the nurse excused herself. Entering were Michelle and an unfamiliar man. Presumably the stripper with blonde hair and flashy suit she mentioned. So, you're alive. Thought I might get the insurance money. Her words sent chills down my spine. How much insurance had she put on me? Oh, I threw away all your stuff that was still in the room. I see. I didn't have many personal belongings in my room due to my simple lifestyle and busy job. What I had taken with me was enough. And this, please sign it. With those words, she produced a divorce oath. Michelle had already signed her part. Then, with a high-pitched, mocking laugh, she said, I'm divorcing a useless loser. Expect an alimony demand. Fine by me. Feeling too defeated to argue back, I honestly filled out and signed the divorce oath, then handed it back to her. She happily took the documents and left with her lover. At that point, I didn't care what happened anymore. Feeling overwhelmed, I lay down on the bed and fell asleep. In the following days, 2 unexpected visitors came to see me. The first was a police officer, asking if I remembered being pushed or involved in an accident, but I couldn't recall anything. The officer looked puzzled, leaving me wondering what it was all about. The second visitor was a well-dressed, middle-aged man. I didn't recognize him, but he seemed eager to know about my past. However, I didn't have much to tell. I lost my parents in a family accident when I was young. Apparently, I had no relatives, so I grew up in a foster home. Many foster homes back then were terrible places, and I was shuffled between several, leaving me with few good memories. I left the foster system upon graduating high school, took a gap year to save money, and then went to college. As I narrated my past, the man became tearful. Excuse me, but who are you? I apologize for not introducing myself sooner. I am Kyle Harrison. I'm your father's brother, your uncle. Really? I had never heard of any family relatives. I thought I had none since no one came to claim me. Your parents eloped and got married, injuring my father, your grandfather. They were estranged, and my father was removed from the family registry. However, when my grandfather's anger subsided and he received a letter and photo of his grandchild, he began searching for my parents. But by then, they had already passed away. The news deeply shocked my grandfather. He started looking for me, using private investigators. My parents had been buried without any relatives, and nobody knew where I had been sent. You used a private investigator, right? They're under our control. I had them check, thinking it couldn't be, but... So, you really are my uncle? Yes, I am. You've had a rough time. Don't worry, we'll support you from now on. His kind words made me want to cry. Perhaps it was because I had been alone for so long, unable to lean on anyone during tough times. Being told that it was okay to feel at ease like this was a first-time experience for me. I told my uncle everything that had happened. My marriage to Michelle, her betrayal, and everything leading up to now. I was completely treated like a cash cow, and even the condo I worked hard to buy was taken over. Before I knew it, I was buried in debt. My uncle patted my head, saying I had done well. His touch felt warm, and I couldn't help crying. I'll handle your divorce, but she chose a bad time, even though it's her own doing. What do you mean? You have an inheritance coming from your father. Let's start the inheritance process. I was surprised. I never imagined my modestly living father had such an estate. Really? How much are we talking about? The amount he mentioned in response to my curious question was astonishing. Yeah, The assets are roughly about $20 million, I guess. A week had passed. I had returned to work at the company. The employees in my department congratulated me on my discharge from the hospital, expressing their relief that I was safe. Then, when I reported my divorce along with my hospital discharge, my colleagues looked at me with indescribable expressions. Their somewhat pitying looks made me realize they knew about her true nature. No, more precisely, after our marriage, rumors about her had apparently been circulating. Everyone had been considerate enough not to mention it to me, but back then, Michelle was apparently flirting with other male employees as well. In fact, many who learned of her betrayal after marrying me speculated that she chose me for the most expensive engagement ring. However, seeing me happy and seemingly doing well in the early days of marriage, they thought it was just rumors. But the women in the office were quite harsh, convinced that she would definitely use me for money. They knew about Michelle's extravagant spending and her complaints about her boyfriend becoming a stripper. At the time, I was too caught up in the excitement of marriage, and it seemed no one wanted to say anything to someone about to get married. However, now, there seemed to be a sense of guilt towards me for having gone through such a messy divorce. It was just my naivety. Nobody else is to blame. Besides, I got to meet relatives I thought I didn't have. When I said that and smiled, the atmosphere in the office brightened up a bit, and I felt a renewed sense of joy in being able to work here again. After being kicked out of my home, I was living in an apartment owned by the Harrison family. It's a really nice place, and though I offered to pay rent, I was told, this was originally part of the assets your father was to inherit. Don't worry about it, but surely, this luxury apartment isn't part of my inheritance, right? Considering the estimate at $20 million I was told about, I was just focusing on returning to a peaceful life amidst these surreal events. That's when my phone rang with a loud noise. It was Michelle calling. What more could she possibly want from me? Concealing assets from your wife, aren't you the worst? And why do I have to pay alimony? Her shrill voice blasted through the phone. Confused, I asked, what are you talking about? This divorce. Why don't you just pay me the alimony? What's this about a lawsuit? My lawyer had advised a civil proceeding would be best, but with my hospitalization and meeting my relatives, I had completely forgotten. I had thought the divorce was over when she filed the papers. And what's this about having relatives? You said you had none. The Harrison conglomerate chairman's grandson. I had no idea. This divorce is void. Michelle ranted, making no sense to me, so I silently hung up and blocked her number. I had consulted with my uncle, and we decided to settle things with Michelle over the weekend. The reserved restaurant had private rooms, and when I arrived, Michelle and her lover were already seated, glaring at me. Don't worry, everything has been taken care of. My uncle reassured me, patting my shoulder. Encouraged by my uncle, we sat across from them to start the discussion. But what was there to discuss? We were already divorced, and I had given up the condo. So, I did as you wanted. Divorced and let go of the condo. What more do you want? Everything. Why were you living such a lowly life, being from the Harrison family? You were hiding money from me. What are you talking about? I met my uncle only after we divorced. However, Michelle seemed not to listen, ranting, what about the alimony? Why don't you pay it? Why am I the one paying in the civil lawsuit? Glancing to the side, I saw my uncle smiling subtly. It seems that the family has been actively handling various matters. And about the credit card, why do I have to pay when it's in your name? No, you made it without permission and used it yourself. But it's in your name, you should pay. My uncle spoke calmly to the agitated Michelle. Regarding that, it wasn't Tyler who made it. It's a card created through illegal actions, even though you were married, right? What? It's joint property, so it should be fine. In that case, you also have a responsibility to pay. My uncle's calm voice was overlaid by a firm tone. You're rich, so it should be fine, right? She's saying she'll divorce you. so just pay up and let's end this," the man said with a smug, unpleasant laugh. Frankly, it wasn't something a cheating partner should be saying. "So, let's skip the hassle of a trial and just settle this with money. It's a bother for you guys too, right?" His one-sided demand was giving me a headache. But my uncle's calm response completely changed the man's attitude. "Well then, let's pursue criminal charges for credit card forgery and marriage fraud." What are you talking about? It's just that this guy is a fool and Michelle got tired of him. But still, under law, there's no obligation to pay alimony to a cheating partner. After saying that, my uncle continued in a slightly lower voice. "Well, we can pay a certain amount for the divorce settlement, but insurance fraud, that we cannot overlook." What do you mean? Tyler, did you know that the life insurance policy on you was over $2 million? Of course, I didn't know. When I involuntarily looked at Michelle, she averted her eyes, trying to escape my gaze. "Then, we'll back down from the civil lawsuit. We'll pay an appropriate amount." As my uncle said this and stood up, he motioned for me to follow. As I stood up and headed towards the exit, my uncle left them with cold words. "Seems like a lot can be uncovered if we dig deeper, right? We'll be pursuing criminal charges, so be prepared." He took me out of the restaurant. What followed happened quickly. My uncle had prepared everything, and I just had to file a lawsuit as the plaintiff, which surprisingly proceeded smoothly. We sued Michelle and her lover, Jason, for attempted insurance fraud among other crimes. The fact that I was completely unaware of the insurance was terrifying. On the day I was kicked out in the heavy rain, it seems Jason had been following me. I don't remember, but he apparently pushed me down some back alley stairs, and after making sure I was unconscious, he left. The doctors said I might not have survived if I was found any later. The prompt emergency call was thanks to a private investigator hired by the Harrison family, who had been watching me from the time they started investigating. The documents I requested from the private investigator included clear evidence of Michelle's infidelity and Jason's background check. The Harrison family's investigation revealed that Michelle had conspired with a legal clerk to take over the condo and was planning insurance fraud. It was said she'd likely get a prison sentence for these charges. So, my years-long relationship and marriage ended in a terrible way. A large house with an impressive gate. In one of its rooms, I was able to meet my grandfather, who was lying in bed. Sean Harrison, a famous investor, was my grandfather, something I could hardly believe. He smiled at me tenderly and nostalgically. "I'm sorry for my appearance. Come closer, let me see your face," he asked, and I sat down on a chair beside his bed. I owe your parents an apology. If I had allowed their marriage, they might not have died so soon." His voice, full of regret and sadness, showed me that my father was truly loved. "Yes, but my parents seemed happy, and I'm really happy to meet my grandfather." Is that so? Is that so?" Grandfather nodded several times, holding back tears, and firmly grasped my hand. "We made it in time. Thank you for being alive." His words told me he had been mourning my parents' accident, and tears started to fall from my eyes. "Yes, I'm grateful to my parents for giving me life, and to you and my uncle." As I said this, my grandfather and my uncle, standing by the bed, looked at me. "Thank you for finding me." I had rushed into marriage, seeking a family. I thought I was alone in this world. Though that failed, I was fortunate to find my true family. There couldn't be a happier ending. Now, I live happily with my family.